Hello and welcome to the Oxygenaddict Podcast. We're brought to you every week by our sponsors precisionfuelandhydration.com. You can personalize your fueling and hydration strategy so you perform at your best with 15% off your first order of electrolytes and carbohydrate fuel with the code OA23 at precisionfuelandhydration.com. So welcome to the show, everybody. I'm your host, Coach Rob Wilby, and I am joined by Coach Chris Palfreyman. Chris, how are you today?
Hello, Rob. I'm very well, thank you.
Good to hear, mate. Every week, we bring you an episode of this podcast to help motivate and inspire you. There's a couple of things you can do for us before we get started today, if you wouldn't mind. If you like this episode, please click follow on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, or click like and subscribe on YouTube. And I've just received the Spotify wrap-up of the year thing this morning through Chris, which showed us that something like 78% of our listeners have been new to listening to the show this year. And it's mainly because our current listeners are sharing episodes over WhatsApp, believe it or not. So if you're one of the current listeners who is clicking share this episode and sending it to friends, we really, really appreciate it. The show's seen massive growth. I think it was, I'm going to share the numbers on socials later on when I've got my act together. It was something like 78% growth this year on new listeners, which is just absolutely brilliant. And it's all down to people who are listening, who are sharing the episode. So hopefully, Chris, we're doing something right if people are sharing it. But thank you so much to the listeners who are doing that. It's really hard in today's climate to get any kind of traction on YouTube and in podcasts by giving out genuine information rather than by giving out clickbait stuff or photographs of people in bikinis or whatever. So hopefully the genuine information we're giving people on how to train for Ironman and triathlon has helped. Our biggest show of the year was the How to Train for Ironman in 6 months, which was our biggest downloaded show ever. And a lot of the new listeners to the show have come to us through that one. So there is the appetite for it out there for people learning about, training and how to compete in triathlon. So that's great news. And if you're looking for help and advice with your training for Ironman, for 70.3, for any kind of endurance event, please get in touch with us. You can email Chris and I at help@oxygenaddict.com, or there's a link in the show notes that books a call to our calendar. We'll talk more about that later. But at Team Oxygen Addicts, we genuinely think we've got the best all-round training platform for age groupers who've got busy lives. So if you like the kind of advice you've been hearing and you want to find out more, and you're looking to take the step up with your training to get some proper coaching, then please get in touch. All right, then this week's episode is going to be focusing on what to do over Christmas, the Christmas recovery week. And we're timing this so that as you're listening to it, it's going to be Christmas week next week. And I think we kick it off, Chris, today with your words of wisdom. These went straight in the top 10 of Chris's words of wisdom that I've ever heard. Last night when we did our Team Oxygen Addict monthly coaching call, we were discussing how we're going to approach the Christmas week and the various kinds of challenges people face over the Christmas week. And I think the thing you said summed it up the best. So I'm going to put you on the spot. Let's see if you can even remember what you said now. What was your advice to athletes last night?
My advice is use the festive period to do whatever you need to do to make sure that you're ready to rock and roll January the 1st or January the 2nd, healthy and raring to go. If you can hit those two really simple objectives, and a lot of you will be thinking, oh, well, that sounds pretty wishy-washy. What about increasing my FTP? What about swimming? All that stuff. Festive period, Christmas time, isn't the time to do that. I know you've been talking about it a lot recently as well, Rob, that you've seen many athletes get it wrong. And that is far worse than getting it a little bit right in terms of the Christmas period is such a tricky one. The pools are closed. There's alcohol. There's lack of sleep. There's usually plenty of people in the house. And it's really hard to find that space to go and do your training, but also have your body and mind in a place to actually absorb it. So I had a conversation with one of my one-to-one athletes yesterday, and I said, to be honest, take the training with a pinch of salt. It's there for a rough structure. Go for a 20-minute jog if you can. Go for a short ride if you can. If the pool's closed, don't worry. And to be honest, if that athlete does none of it, but they come into January feeling healthy, which is kind of the main point, but also raring to go, then that's going to be total success, because that's when we're going to start building the training in. You're not going to make huge gains over the Christmas period, and we don't want you to.
Yeah, I think Andy made a really good point last night, didn't he? That we have to look at the festive period through the lens of the amount of overall life stress. And the temptation is to think, well, I've got a week off work. I'll have loads of time to train. And the reality is that not only do you not have loads more time to train than usual, most people have less time to train than usual. And so it's the first year we've approached this Christmas week really proactively and sat back and said, do you know what? We need to put our stake in the ground here. And we really need to say to people, look, let's really put recovery at the heart of what we do. Let's put recovery after a hard training block, make it really important, schedule a recovery week around the fact that almost all people are going to have this really busy, hectic schedule without very much time, without very much sleep, with lots more alcohol, without the usual good nutrition. So let's plan into that. And rather than, the opposite extreme is I love bringing this example up because I think it's the most bonkers idea ever. The Rafa Festive 500. God bless them. And I'm sure there are people who absolutely thrive off this, but there are a very small number of them who do, because how do you fit all that in? For the majority of people who have got busy jobs, who've got family lives, super, super difficult. So I think the way to give this a bit of framing is I wanted to say to athletes who we coach and to listeners who we don't coach, let's give you a framework for how your Christmas week can be. And instead of having a training plan, have some things that you can concentrate on that will, as you said, put you in a better position come January the 1st without them necessarily being fitness and exercise training based. That's what I want people to have as a takeaway from this episode.
I'm just going to add two little pieces on top of that, which is one, maybe we need to get rid of the word training when we're not talking about progressive load. I think we all fall into the trap of thinking training more, get fitter. But we're talking about a very specific 7 days of the year where we don't really want you to be increasing the stress, and that's mental stress, but also the physical stress that we put you through the sessions. So I think when we're talking about any of the structure that Rob's about to talk us through, they're not training sessions. They are structure to guide you towards hopefully feeling healthy and raring to go in January. Remember, they're the only two objectives. We're not looking at any other metric. So if you can hit those two things. And the other thing is approach the week totally guilt-free. Whatever Rob's about to talk you through, this is what we want you to do as coaches. It's guilt-free. You're doing the right thing. And I think a lot of us over the Christmas period get really agitated and think, I should be training. And I know that one of my club partners or training partners is going for a 3-hour ride. They might do that. Let them go and do that. And that's okay. But stay with your friends and family and be guilt-free, be in the moment, spend that time with family. And I think it's really easy to forget the whole point of Christmas, and it's to make the most of it with your family and friends. And we're triathletes, and the majority of us are full-time working. We rarely have that kind of green light to fully be in the moment and stop. And I think if you really have to do that now. So, Rob, over to you with the actual structure.
Yeah. Mate, I've made these mistakes in the past. I'm sure lots of people listening have. I remember getting involved in, for no other reason than one of the guys I used to train with came up with a spreadsheet and shared it with us and decided he was going to allocate points to all of us across December. And I think, I can't remember the point score exactly, but you got points for doing a 1-hour run, and it was maximum of 2 1-hour runs a day. And we got drawn into this ridiculous, convinced ourselves that doing lots of running was going to be the thing that helped us next year. And I got in a head-to-head tussle with this guy, and it got to the point where I was fully planning to go out and do 2 1-hour runs on Christmas Day so that I got maximum points, So that's the lens that I look at this through. I am a recovered maniac.
Yeah.
So I understand the compulsion to train for training's sake, at least as well as anybody out there. And as I've aged and as I've done work on myself, I've got to the point where I like to think I'm a little bit more balanced now. So for those of you who are incredibly driven and incredibly compulsive with the training, I think your first thing you said is the lens to see this through. There is a point to this. The point from a training point of view is to recover from the training that you've already done in that block and get yourself ready for all the training you're going to do in that block. And you can still do some stuff in the middle that's actively going to help your rest, recovery, and get you ready to go again. So for those of you who are thinking it's not about the Christmas festivities for me, fine, frame it around how can I best get my body refreshed and how can I best get ready for the next block. So here's our framework. We've got 5 things that we're going to talk to you about. And I've talked about these frameworks before, and I think they're really good. It's taken from, it's not my work, this, although it lines up with a lot of the things that I believe. It's from a guy called Dr. Simon Marshall. He wrote a great book called The Brave Athlete. And this sits outside that a little bit, but his framework is called a SEEDS framework. And I just love this because it breaks down the things or some of the things that you need to take care of to have a well-balanced life and to have a healthy body so that you can exercise and train. And I think, again, there's 2 balances there for the people who are really obsessed with the training. Think of it as the 5 things that you can balance that are essentially it's like a cheat code as how to get better outside of the training. So we'll go through the 5 things, we'll name them first and we'll go through them one by one, and then we'll apply them how you can sort of take care of each one of these things over the Christmas period. The 5 things that make up SEEDS are sleep, exercise, eating, drinking, and stress management. And just by framing the 5 things in that simple way, I think we can see that most of us focus on the exercise part of it, maybe on the eating part of it through nutrition. Maybe the rest of it is just window dressing a lot of the time. And I genuinely don't think it should be if we're looking to take care of our marginal gains, essentially. So let's kick it off with sleep, I think, because this is the one where it feels, looking ahead, as though you've got some time off work and you should be able to get some extra sleep. The reality, though, is that for a lot of people, there's lots of social occasions that go out and involve staying out really late. So from an athletic point of view, how do we minimize that sleep disruption? I think that's the first thing to talk about, isn't it? How do we look at it through the lens and go, all right, well, we're going to have some nights out here, but we have to recognize that these come at a cost. And did your nan ever used to say to you, every hour you go to bed after 12 o'clock is like 3 more hours of sleep that you've missed? I love that line.
She used to say it in French, though, because she was French. But yeah, very much the same. Yeah, love that.
I think it's true. And it's true, especially as you get older. The other side of 50, man, if I get beyond midnight, it's like I've got a hangover and I'm jet lagged the next day.
Yeah.
The thing says we're not the fun police. We're not here to try and stop people having fun, but be aware, make it visible, plan these things out, and know that if you are going to have some nights out and you're not getting to bed till 2, 3, 4, 5 in the morning, there is going to be an increased cost to that over the week ahead. And if you're the obsessed triathlete, is that preparing you as well as possible for the block that's coming in January? I think that's the first thing to say.
I actually think, Rob, we're the opposite of the fun police. With what we've just said, I think that we're encouraging people to have fun. And obviously people have all sorts of different ideas what fun might mean for them. But we're saying step out of your routine and be in the moment, be with your family, be with your friends. If they're going to the pub, go to the pub. Absolutely fine. We genuinely encourage that because I do think that the athlete that is able to switch off can then switch back on. And when it's on, it's really on. And as you said before the podcast, it's time to rock and roll. And if you can do that in January, then we're absolutely laughing. But we don't need you to do that now. So we're not the fun police, but we're quite the opposite. Go and have fun. Switch off. Do whatever's available.
Totally. And I think, again, one of the things when we discussed the episode beforehand is just like when we discussed looking back over the block through the lens of how your tests have gone to see what your habits have been like, almost like the tests are a byproduct of those habits. I think analyzing what you do on a week where your training's much lower can help you focus on, well, when we get out the Christmas period, sleep is like a performance enhancing drug. If I can find a way to get an extra 30 minutes, and it's a good thing to sit and think about. I've done a little bit of reading about this, and they reckon that just an extra 30 minutes of sleep a night is going to be a real big bonus for people. So spend some time looking into that. How can you track the sleep? I know since I've had the Apple Watch, I've been really interested to look at what my quality of sleep has been. And lo and behold, there is this massive correlation between the nights when I don't look at my phone and I read a book before bed and the lights off at 11 and I don't eat late versus when I do all of those things wrong. It is a big correlation for me. Might not be for everybody, but that's it's put it in plain sight to me now. If I've got the phone out at 1 a.m. and I've had a massive load of quality streets just before bed, it's on me the next day if I don't feel good. And that's really important for a person with a psychological makeup like me. I've got to believe I'm in charge of those things.
So how do you, I think I can relate to that. I know what you mean by quality streets are there. I'm gonna destroy them all. But I feel like this is coming from a place of real passion for you, that you've got the experience where you know that there's something that inhibits your good sleep. And there'll be plenty of people in exactly the same position. So what are you advising them? Are you saying just don't?
Well, no, I don't think it's a case of saying to people, don't do this during the Christmas period. But if we take my own thing as an example, you're gonna eat more chocolatey foods than you would do usual. So the control I try and put on it is to say, right, there's a 7 o'clock cap on this. After 7 o'clock, I'm not going to eat.
I thought we weren't the fun police, Rob. And now you're talking about 7 o'clock cap for chocolate.
Yeah, that's me. That's what I have to try and do. And let's be clear, like, I do not manage to do this most of the time. But the days that I do, I sleep better. So there's the correlation. If I'm struggling mentally, if I'm low on energy, if I'm feeling not great, I have to say to myself, right, you need to take some control of this. Don't do these things so that you can get more sleep and roll over. And again, it's not so much about Christmas. It's about building a habit going forward of, what small thing can I change that'll have a relatively bigger effect.
I think that's an interesting point. The difference between the listener thinking that we're telling them what to do or not do versus actually, I think what we're trying to get across is do whatever you're going to do, but have the awareness of some of the pros and cons that come with it. And one might be your sleep's going to be affected, or potential hangovers, or motivation the next day, or that's absolutely fine. As long as you're making conscious decisions for your actions, we're totally fine. Have the box of quality streets as long as you're aware, but then don't be frustrated with yourself the next day when you want to go for a run, but you're struggling to do so. Again, it gets really complicated when you're kind of thinking about the mental health and the physical health, where they interlink. And Christmas is an absolute nightmare for that, because we don't feel great because we're probably overeating a lot of the time. And our mental health takes a hit, and then we're not doing as much exercise as we used to, and it can quickly spiral. So I think for me, the main takeaway when it comes to decision making around sleep and all those decisions is just be aware. And whatever you go and do that. That's okay. But be aware that there may be a consequence along the way.
Yeah, 100%. And I think that leads us on to the second point we were going to talk about, which is the eating part of seeds, the nutrition and the meal planning part. Over the Christmas period, like, the key thing is here, don't be afraid of treats. I think it's a celebration for a reason. But the thing to be aware of is, and if your Christmas is anything like mine, you'll get this. If I go to a family gathering every day for 4 days, they tend to be the kind of Christmas buffet family gathering where there's food out from about 1 o'clock. And there's more food appears, and aunties and grandmas bring more food out, and that table is full. It's hard, man. It's hard to apply those rigorous nutrition rules. So one of the things that we try and do is we try and have a little meal planner for the rest of the time and plan the healthy things that we're going to eat, even if it's healthy breakfasts and healthy lunchtime salads, kind of knowing that the destruction is coming later in the day. Conscious decision for a big salad at lunchtime can be a small mental win when the quality street truck is rolling at you at high speed later in the afternoon.
I like that. And what's your take on, a lot of the people in my kind of sporting community always talk about, I'm going to get out before the Christmas lunch and go and smash myself on the bike or go and do a long run to then reward myself or make it easier when I see that massive plate of food in front of me. Do you think that's a bit of a slippery slope, or actually there's a bit of logic to that thinking?
I think it's probably better than not doing a run or a ride and then overeating like the rest of the population are going to be. I mean, we're going to come on to the exercise part of this in a minute, but I have a little Christmas tradition of going for a jog on Christmas morning, because my dad was crazy and used to take me out for a jog when I was like 9 or 10. And it's something that we've always done and continue to this day. Put a Santa hat on and go out for a 20-minute jog on Christmas morning. And it's certainly not training, but it is being outside and it's moving through nature. So I think that's the next thing to talk about is the exercise part of the Seeds Planner. You summed it up beautifully before when you said, don't think of it as training. I've got something to add to that, which is when I was out earlier, I was out for a walk in the woods, and I've realized that the arc of my life has gone. I started running and cycling because I wanted to race people who also enjoyed running and cycling. And I started to train because I wanted to win and wanted to beat people. And as the arc started to flatten, I started to realize that I much enjoyed training in nature than I enjoyed training running through city streets, for example. And then that shifted to an awareness of, I really enjoy being outdoors in nature and moving. And so for a while, it was like I would exercise and I would go to a beautiful place to train. Now it's the opposite way around. It's like the movement in nature is the thing that's important to me. And I think that's the lens to see Christmas exercise through. Get your body out. There's a sheepdog living inside all of us that needs to move forward through nature. Take that sheepdog out for a walk in nature for an hour. And if that's what you do during Christmas, I think we're preaching to the choir here already, telling people to make exercise a daily part of their routine. It's almost the Christmas week advice is to step back from that, but still get yourself outside and move in nature every day.
I think a good little add-on to that is it's just try and be an example. And I don't want to get on a high horse. I'm certainly not an example to many people at all. But I think when you're making those decisions around the Christmas period, look around the room and maybe you can be an example for the rest of the room and just go out for a 20-minute walk. A lot of people will literally just stay in that room 10 hours. And that's not an exaggeration. I've seen it many times with my family members. And when I put my hand up and I say, I'm just going to go out for a 20-minute walk, who wants to join me? One or two reluctant hands will come and I'll bring them out. And the difference between that little group of people coming back from that walk, having been in the woods, full of endorphins, fresh air, had many different conversations versus the ones that have stayed on the sofa. So I think if you can, sure, have a drink, have all the chocolates, have all the food, but if at some point you can ask yourself, am I being the example of the athlete? Because the majority of you are the athletes of the family. So step up to that role and don't necessarily follow the crowd. The crowd's always going to pull you to the sofa and watch another 4 hours of TV. But if you can just put your hand up and say, I'm going for a walk, come with me, you're guaranteed to put a smile on people's faces. So I think that's another little bonus to add.
Yeah. Yeah, get the sheepdog inside everybody out, get the pack moving in nature, get everybody's sheepdogs happy before they come back inside to lie down and eat more food. Yeah, that's good. I had a note here to talk about, you've already mentioned this, pools are closed and that's okay. We can have the panic in the brain that we don't get to swim. I came really close in our plans this year to just not putting any swimming at all in the plan over Christmas week. And then I thought, well, there's going to be some people who have a pool and they're going to have access or they're away at Christmas or whatever. But it really is genuinely, the world isn't going to end if you don't swim for a week. So don't panic over it. There's no access to the pool. No problem. That's fine. The other little thing with, as much as we've said, make it about exercise, not training, still do your S&C. That 5 or 10 minutes a day that you can do first thing, last thing, while the TV's on, do a few crunches and hip bridges, do a bit of yoga, do a bit of flexibility. That's 5 minutes well spent during your day, I think. So that's a little bit of exercise that's super easy to fit into the day, isn't it?
Yeah, totally. I wrote a little note down which may help a few people, which is use your exercise to include other family members. So it's a bit like what we were saying earlier about being an example and bringing people with you. Again, I think it's an amazing opportunity to go for a jog with a family member or a friend who may be at a very different phase in their athletic pursuit, and they may be really, really slow runners, and it might be more of a walk. That's okay. Be that person that encourages to go out with them and just have a chat and go for a run. Same with go for a run with some kids. You know, there are always loads of kids in the house.
And getting kids out for a jog on Christmas Day is awesome. And you never, ever pass another kid when you're out with kids running who doesn't want to join you.
Yeah.
You can see them go, God damn, I want to be running with those kids. Yeah, that's brilliant.
Exactly. So if you can be that person that encourages activities and exercise for health and for positivity, I think that's kind of our job as athletes done for the festive period. So use your activities and use your training in inverted commas as that opportunity, as opposed to usually it's kind of a selfish pursuit of us always trying to increase our aerobic capacity. Well, this week's different. Yeah. It's not about you this week. It's about other people, and you can try to use exercises that.
Yeah, love it. Increase someone else's aerobic capacity.
Mm.
Right. So I'm going to put my fun police hat on, Chris. This is my little blue light on top of the helmet here.
Because
the next thing we have to talk about is about drinking. So, as you have already said, there's no question that drinking is a game that gives on one hand and takes away with the other. So I think you've just got to plan your week around it. I think from an athletic point of view, the less drinking, the better. From a relaxing and socializing point of view, for a guy who hasn't drunk for 12 years, goddamn Christmas is hard when you're seeing family members that you don't really know and you don't get a drink anymore. So for anyone who's the designated driver for the night, right, I get it. I really get it. And I'm sure other people do out there as well. So it's the balance, isn't it? I can't remember which athlete it was in the app that mentioned us the other day and said, look, I'm trying to plan ahead around the fact I've got this big conference. We're going to have 2 or 3 big nights out in a row. How do I plan my training around it? And the answer is, well, it's really, really difficult to, but good on you for being aware of the fact you're just not going to be able to go for a run if you're waking up with a raging hangover. And that's okay, but plan for it. Get yourself some extra sachets of Precision Hydration 1500 ready for the hangover. Because here's a note from our sponsors. I don't think there is a better product to help with something it wasn't designed for than having a PFH 1500 with a hangover. Any of my mates I've ever given one to who still drink are just like, my God, this stuff is it's like the magic elixir of hangovers, isn't it?
Yeah. So I'm not teetotal. I do drink, but I'm not what you'd call a drinker. But over Christmas, expectations kind of change, and there is that social peer pressure that, not as if we're teenagers, but that there is that understanding within the room of, come on, guys, let's open the Baileys again, which is okay, and that's fun. And don't get me wrong, I'll be the one. I'll be the one suggesting the Baileys, but I think something that could help is set your own expectations and don't be that person in the lead up to Christmas in your head thinking, I'm not going to drink, I'm not going to drink, I'm not going to drink, not going to drink. The first cork goes and you're like, oh yeah, I'll have a drink, please. Because then it feels like failure. Yeah. Unless you're completely teetotal, I think it's okay to have a drink and have 2 drinks, have 3 drinks, have as many as you want to a degree, but know that your expectations are, okay, I'm probably going to drink today. Tomorrow is a bit of a write-off. I'm just going to go for a walk with whichever family member's up for it. And that's brilliant. That's okay. But if you have the expectation of, I'm not going to drink, I'm an athlete, I'm not going to drink, I'm an athlete, and then first question is, yeah, I'll have a drink. For the rest of the day, you're thinking, oh, who am I? I said I was an athlete, and now I'm supposed to be an athlete, and I'm drinking, and now I'm going to drink 35 drinks, and now I'm pissed. It's going to happen to a few of us. I know it is. But just set your expectations and be kind on yourself. If you're going to have some drinks, that's fine. But don't set up yourself to go for a 3-hour ride the next day because, again, we don't want you to do that. So have some drinks and just, I think, relax and take it easy is the main message on this one.
And it's knowing what's going to happen. That's the reality of it, isn't it? If you're going to go out on the lash, don't plan to train the next day, then you're not going to. There's also an element of this that the planning into the next block takes care of as well, because it'll remind people who've had some time off the beer and drink over Christmas, it'll remind them how they feel and maybe give them that renewed focus of, all right, when I get into my next block, I'm going to stop drinking again. So there's the lesson of doing things differently over Christmas that you can take forward into the next block with you as well. Yeah, good. Here's my grandma's avoid hangovers that are crippling tip for you. The pint of water before bed when you've been drinking. That can really help mitigate the difference between what used to feel like life and death at 4 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
I'd go one further now and add PFH into that glass of water before bed as well. Get the precision hydration in.
Rob, do you have any advice to the individual that's looking to not drink anything, whether they've been total for a long period of time or whether they're actually just kind of challenging themselves for health reasons, that over the Christmas period, I just don't want to drink? What are your thoughts on that?
I think the two parts of it are, have a plan for what you are going to drink. Because if you end up at a party, I know in the early days of me not drinking, the challenge was going to a social function and finding out there is nothing but alcohol at the function. So take something with you to drink. These days, people are luckier that non-alcohol beer actually tastes decent. Back in the day, your choices were Caliber or water, and you choose the water every time. It was like being punished if you tried a no-alcohol beer. But taking some no-alcohol beers with you to a party, in fact, I think it's a pretty good thing to do, even if you're taking real beers, because you'd be surprised the number of people who, on the sly, will take one of your zero alcohol beers out of the fridge, and you think, well, hang on, I've only had one and there's none left. So there's that. But also explain to your friends what's going on. I think occasionally there's the social peer pressure part you talked about, your mates egging you on. If you're genuinely determined not to drink, or if you've got reasons why you're not going to drink, setting it up ahead of time. I remember going around to all my mates and saying, look, we used to be drinking buddies. I need to let you know I'm not going to be drinking with you anymore. You can't do that in a group setting, but you can have that conversation with people individually. And every single one of my friends was totally supportive on a one-to-one basis. When we got together in a group, they still called me all the names under the sun for having given up drinking, but that's okay. You know, you've got the support on that kind of level. So I think that's the way to go. Have a plan, tell people beforehand.
I think a small low-hanging fruit on that, and this isn't for the teetotal person, this is for someone that's looking to minimize their drinking over the Christmas period, is say no to the first drink when you're in that room. Just say, oh no, I'm on water, or whichever non-alcoholic choice you go for. And that breaks the momentum. It's that first drink. Is everyone drinking? No, these three people aren't. And then you're not going to be hassled during the rest of the evening of, do you want a drink? Do you want a drink? And you can go and get your own drink at any point in the evening. You don't have to start with everyone, because once you start with everyone, you're part of that momentum, and it's really hard to jump off the boat. Yeah. But if you join the boat, it's very different, and you're doing it on your own terms.
I like that. I think that's good.
Yeah, I think that can help.
Yeah. There is one extra little thing I'll throw in right here. One of the lines I was told in my early days of sobriety was, it's the first drink that gets you drunk. And you sit there and go, don't be stupid. It's like beer 4 that gets me drunk. And the point of it is, once the lid's off, once you've had that first drink, all bets are off. Especially if you're the kind of drinker that I was. That first one means, yeah, exactly. You get a taste for it and you're away to the races. Whereas if you don't ever have that first one, things feel very different in the evening. So yeah.
I've got 2 other real small points on this, because I think it's quite a big subject around Christmas.
This is turning into the teetotal podcast, isn't it?
Well, I might be drinking, Rob. So. The other one is, you'll probably end up going to a pub at some point, and I've done this a few times, and I get a real kick out of it, which is order a cup of tea. When everyone else is like, what drink do you want? What drink do you want? And they're all saying, oh, Guinness, Foster's, Stella, whatever. Just go, I'll have a cup of tea, please. It completely breaks the momentum. You have your cup of tea, it creates a conversation, and then you can go to your pint later on. And it's a nice way to kind of regain control of that momentum that you were talking about. And my last point is, as you head into the festive season, look forward again, and look forward to when you get to the summer, think back of what you wanted to have achieved in that 6 months or 12 months. And the majority of you listening have already got that A race booked into your calendar. And for a lot of you, it's a big, scary race. It's 70.3. Well, it's an Ironman. And if you really want to commit to the process, then all the decisions you make from now will have some sort of impact, whether they're small or big, towards how you feel in 6 months or 12 months. So again, I don't want to be the fun police, but I just want to make sure that if you are fully throwing yourself in towards this big, scary challenge, and you want to make the most of that opportunity, then I think you'll get a real kick out of actually saying no to that pint, no to that shot of tequila that's going to go round, and just keep saying no. And the more times you say no, say it 3 times in a row, then it becomes really easy. And when you get into January, you're going to feel amazing. A lot of people will be talking about, oh, the hangovers, and you'll be talking about, I'm going for a 3-hour ride, and I feel unbelievable. And it's kind of that decision-making 2 paths. And I'm not saying one's right and one's wrong, but if you want to feel amazing in January, I think it's quite clear saying no to the majority of kind of nutrition and alcohol choices. Keep saying no, and it's going to feel good. And actually, the reality is you're probably inspiring 1 or 2 people in that room, even though they won't tell you. But seeing that one person go against the grain and say, no, I'm not drinking. Why? Because I'm going to go and do an Ironman, for example, and I want to give it 100%. Life's too short not to. That can have a real big positive impact on that individual. So for those of you that are thinking, oh, maybe it's a bit pathetic saying no to alcohol, go for it. If you believe in that choice deep down, I'd follow your instinct on that one.
Yeah, nice. Right, so the last part of the SEEDS equation is the S for stress management. And again, there's 2 parts to this. There's the what we do during Christmas week part, and then there's the how this forms a habit that helps us going into January and moving forward. So it always feels as though there should be no stress over Christmas because we are told by TV that it's going to be twinkly lights and it's going to be nice music. That's never been my experience of Christmas. I don't know about anybody else's. It's relatives that you haven't seen and you've forgotten you don't get on with. There's an awful lot of that goes on as well. So the first part of stress management, I think, that is worth talking about is the time outdoors and moving in nature that we've already mentioned. That's a really great way to break up any kind of day. Make sure you've got something built into every day where you go out and you get that movement in nature. The second couple of things that I think people can build in, and it'll form a really good habit going into January, are journaling, which we talked about, and meditation. Those 2 things can have a really positive effect on people's mindsets. It only needs to be 5 minutes with an A4 pad and paper first thing in the morning. But just the act of getting your whatever's in my brain down onto a piece of paper has a really surprising effect of clearing out the trash from the night before and letting you to move forwards. And the HRV tracking app that we've always recommended, HRV for training, is a really great way to see how much stress your system is experiencing that morning, because it's often subconscious, isn't it? So if anyone's not used HRV for training before, you can just download it from the App Store, and it gives you a really clear red light, green light, amber light, traffic light system of, is your body under significant stress? Is your mind subconsciously under significant stress at the moment? Those, I think, are 3 things that really help mitigate the stress that people are under, for sure.
I think I totally sign up to all of those. And I think if the time, it all depends on what a family Christmas looks like. But I know that at times in my day, everyone's doing their own thing, and that's totally acceptable. And for me, I find it like the perfect time to go and sort my crap out. And with that, I mean, I've got an old bike that I want to use as a winter bike, but I haven't got around to doing it because I'm in full-time work and got the dogs to walk after work, and I just don't have time to fix it. So if there's an hour window where I can actually go and put the mudguards back on and change the chain, which is something that I should have done 2 months ago, that's going to help me with the original goal of being raring to go and being healthy in January, because I'm not going to be stressing about that. And when I can go and ride my bike again outside. And it's all those little bits of admin-y type stuff that surrounds triathlon, but it's not direct training, but it's going to help you be a better athlete come January. Again, now's the perfect time to do so. But don't be the person that disappears from the table to go and do that. It's if everyone else is doing something. And
you're going to the shed down the end of the garden, aren't you? That's your escape. You're going to go down and drink homebrew Damson wine and change your chain.
Exactly. I'm pretending that I'm wrapping up Christmas presents, but half the time I'm just changing chains on different bikes.
You're one of about 4% of listeners who actually know how to change their own chain, Chris. That's the thing. Maybe we should have Chris's chain changing challenge. Maybe that should be, we'll get listeners to comment there we go.
Yeah.
Comment in the comments box in Spotify
No,
after this
don't do
episode
that.
if you can change your own chain, if you've been inspired to do it by Chris. Oh dear, I love it. Hey, well, listen, that's all the things I had on my list to talk about this week. I think we've got stuff there for people to think about going forward through Christmas, haven't we?
Yeah, I think the main takeaway is enjoy Christmas. That's what it's all about.
Do it. Have fun.
Yeah,
and think about the
exactly.
stuff that you can then take care of going into January that's really going to help your year.
As Coach Rob would say, have fun until 7 p.m. And then it's not so fun, is it?
That's not what I said.
It is. It is.
I said there's no chocolates for me and my fat boy tum after 7 o'clock. That's what I said. Oh dear. Other approaches may vary. All right. So we're going to wrap this up. I want to wish everybody a really happy, merry, pleasant Christmas. We're going to have an episode out next week, a bit of a Christmas bonus for you. So have a listen out for that one. And then we'll be back with you in January with some new year, new you type ideas. So here are some discount codes and deals for you to wrap this up. At precisionfuelandhydration.com, you can use the code OA23 for 15% off your first electrolyte order. Remember, if you're going to be hammering the beers over Christmas, there's nothing as effective in my book as a pH 1500 sachet to really get those electrolytes back in there. You can also use their free fuel and hydration planning tool to receive a personalized strategy for your next race. That's on their website. It'll help you understand your own carbohydrate, electrolyte, and fluid needs so you can refine your strategy during training and then you can nail it in racing. And you can even book a free one-to-one video consultation with their athlete support team. Over at teamoxygenaddict.com, I think we've got the most comprehensive endurance sports coaching program for busy age groupers. You can book a call with Chris or I, and you can have a chat with us and see if you'd be a good fit for joining the team. Let's see how we could best help you achieve your endurance event goals for the coming season. So remember then, there's links in the show notes so you don't have to remember them. Until next week, have a great, safe Christmas week. I'm Coach Rob Wilby. You've been listening to the Oxygen Addict Podcast.